Alright guys, hope you guys are doing good today. Just wanted to do our next video for our Minecraft novel study of the island. So last time we stopped, we were at the end of chapter 1. So today we're going to start at the beginning of chapter 2. Okay, if you remember last time, she had figured out kind of how to dig dirt, how to place it. She finally figured out how to mine the trees, and she got some fruit, and she finally was able to eat after being hungry for so long. So that's where we're going to pick up where we left off. We will take a look just for a couple of minutes at some of the the dirt huts that you guys built. Pretty much everybody did a great job. There are a few people that used a bit more than 64 blocks, but for the most part, everyone followed the directions, did a great job. So we'll just start over here, and you can see where we also did the figurative language on the sign. Here Millie did one that says my mind was bouncing on a thin tightrope. Great example of figurative language. So alright, we'll pause that there and we'll come back to it. I'm going to start chapter 2. Panic drowns thought. So today I'm going to do the reading, and we'll stop and we'll talk about some different things. So here we go. Using my new power, I knocked out the other leaf blocks on the rest of the trees. I not only came away with 2 more apples, but a critical discovery about my belt and pack. It happened right after the first apple, when I was boxing the leaves. Instead of dropping the fruit, I got a small sapling. On strike again, I asked my frozen hand and dropped the mini tree into my belt. Seconds later, when I got a second one, I absent-mindedly stuffed it into the same pouch. That's when I realized that they'd only shrunk. Not only shrunk, but flattened and stacked themselves together like playing cards. Well now, I said with a smile, this might actually be helpful. That turned out to be an understatement. By the time I'd finished stripping all 3 trees, I managed to stack 12 compressed saplings in just one compartment. And, I might add, at 0 weight. Now, if you played Minecraft, you know when you mine, you can put up to 64 items in one box. So you should already be familiar with what she's describing. Looking over the additional pouches in my pack, I thought, I can carry a whole warehouse worth of stuff. Which means, I said, scowling at the belt, my mood deflating like stacked saplings. Until I find stuff worth carrying, you're as helpful as a wind-powered fan. And think about that. What good does a fan do if it's powered by the wind? As far as if you have it in your house and you're trying to cool down, it doesn't do any good at all because it's not going to move. That's her point. There's got to be more apple trees, I thought, staring up at the cliff. Through panicked eyes, it initially looked like an impassable barrier. Now, calmer, confident, and well-fed, I could see that it was more like a steep slope than a sheer wall. Who knows what else is over there, I thought, hiking up some square dirt cubes. If I'd only thought clearly instead of being such a total dweeb, I wouldn't have trapped myself on this side of the island in the first place. In fact, maybe it wasn't an island at all. Maybe this beach was the start of a whole continent. Don't get me wrong. I hadn't abandoned the notion of all this being just a dream, but still, part of me couldn't help wishing to come up over the top of the hill to see a ranger station, or a town, or a giant city, or... There wasn't. I stood on the even, green summit and stared with crushing disappointment at the rest of an uninhabited island. The land stretched out like a claw, 2 wooded pincers nearly closing a round, shallow lagoon. I couldn't judge how large the island was. By that point, I still wasn't very good at measuring by blocks. But it couldn't have been too big because I could definitely see the end of it under the late afternoon sun. And with the sinking orange square, so went my spirits as well. So the sinking orange square is how she is describing the sun. So just like in the water, I thought I was alone. And just like in the water, I was wrong. Moo! The sound made me jump. What? I said, nervously looking all around. Who's there? Moo! Came the sound again, pulling my eyes to the base of the hill. It was an animal, black and white, with a body as rectangular as its surroundings. I picked my way down the western slope, which was easier and more gradual than the treacherous eastern side, and walked right up to the fearless creature. Studying it more closely, I could see that it wasn't entirely black and white. Gray horns, pink inside the ears, and a pink, shallow sac below the stomach. "You gotta be a cow," I said, and the moo I got was the best sound I'd heard all day. "You don't know how happy I am to see you," I sighed. Hey, I know it's still just a dream and all, but it just feels so good not to be..." The word stuck in my throat, stinging my nose and eyes along. So when she says the word stuck in my throat, it didn't literally stick in her throat, obviously. So that's another example of figurative language. It just means that it was hard to put that word out because she didn't want to admit that she was by herself, and it made her almost cry. "Bah!" answered the cow. "Wait, what?" I asked, stepping closer. "Are you, like, bilingual, or..." "Bah!" said the animal, but not the one in front of me. I looked up and past the cow, toward the sound's true owner. It was rectangular, but a little shorter and practically all black. I'd almost missed it in the dim light of the early evening. Now, as I approached the darkening woods, another animal, as white as the clouds above, stepped out from behind its black twin. Despite their straight, flat outlines, I could see the barest details of woolly coats. "You're sheep," I said, smiling, and reached out to pet one. I wasn't thinking. I didn't mean to punch. The animal yelped, flashed pinkish red, and took off running through the woods. "Oh, sorry," I called after it. "Sorry, little sheep." I felt so bad that I turned to his unfazed friend and babbled. "I didn't mean it, really. I still don't know how to use this body, you know?" Cluck, 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 came an answer to my left. Two small birds, each about a block high, were pecking the nearby ground. They had short, skinny legs, plump bodies covered with white feathers, and small heads ending in flat orange beaks. "I'm not sure if you're chickens," I told them. "You do have kind of duckish features." They glanced up at me for a second and clucked. "But you sound like chickens," I continued. "So I guess calling you chickens makes more sense than chickaducks." The word gave me a little chuckle, which quickly became a real guffaw. It felt good to laugh, to let out all the crazy tension of the day. That's when I heard a new sound. It was a throaty, phlegmy gargle that sent chills up my spine. I looked all around, trying to figure out the source. Sound on the island seemed to be coming from every direction. I stood there listening, wishing the chickens would shut up. Then I smelled it, mold and rot, like a dead rat in an old sock. I didn't see the figure until it was only a dozen or so spaces away. At first, I thought it was another person, dressed just like me, and I took an automatic step forward. Then, just as instinctively, I stopped and backed away. Its clothes were ragged and filthy. Its flesh was a mottled green. Its eyes, if you could call them eyes, were nothing but lifeless black points in a flat, unmoving face. Memories flooded my mind, images of creatures I'd known from stories but had never seen in person. And now, here it was, approaching with outstretched arm. This was a zombie! I tried to retreat. Bumping against a tree, the zombie closed. I dodged. Rotted fist smashed into my chest, throwing me back. Pain shot through my body. I gasped. It lunged. I fled. Numb with fear, I sprinted for the hill. I wasn't thinking, wasn't planning. Terror drove my every step. Something clacked in the darkness behind me, followed by a noise like whipped air. Something smacked into the tree in front of me. A feather-tipped, quivering stick. An arrow. Was the zombie armed? I hadn't noticed. I just kept running. Something red flashed to my right. A cluster of eyes, followed by a clipped hiss. I scampered up the slope of the hill, glanced back only when I was at the summit. In the pale light of a rising square moon, I could see the zombie was still coming. It was already at the bottom of the slope and beginning to climb up after me. Throat closing in fright, I tore my way down the eastern cliff. I slipped, fell to the bottom, and heard a sickening crack. "Urgh!" I hissed as bolts of agony stabbed through my ankle. That's a really cool way of saying that her ankle hurt. Bolts of agony stabbing her ankle. I can picture that. Where to go? What to do? Should I jump back into the ocean and try to swim away? I froze at the edge of the blackened water. What if that squid was still out there? And what if it'd gotten hungry? Another moan echoed across the starry night. I turned to see the zombie's head poke over the top of the hill. Frantically, I looked for somewhere to go, someplace to hide. My eyes flicked back and forth, settling on the single block of earth I dug out earlier in the day. From it came the spark of a desperate idea. Digging! As the zombie started down the slope, I ran to the cliff below it and furiously tore into the earth. 1, 2, 3, 4 punches, and the first block in front of me came away. 1, 2, 3, 4, and the one behind it popped free. I could hear the ghoul approaching, each groan growing louder. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I cleared 4 earthen blocks right in front of me, 2 above and below, just enough for me to squeeze into the space. Deeper, my mind screamed, get deeper. And if fate could talk, it would have sneered and said, you're not going anywhere. My fist bounced off something cold and hard. I'd hit solid rock. A few pointless punches told me I was trapped. The monster barely seconds away. I spun, saw the zombie, and set down a block of dirt between us. The ghoul reached over, smashing me in the chest. I flew back, hitting the stone cliff, chest aching, gasping for breath. I jammed the second soil cube on top of the first. Darkness fell. I was buried alive. My tomb shut out light but not sound. Zombie moans still rang in my ears. What if it could dig? What if I'd only delayed death by seconds? Go away! I shouted helplessly. Please, just leave me alone. Gagging growls answered. Please, I pleaded. Unfeeling, uncaring, unstoppable moans answered. Wake up, I whispered. I've got to wake up. Wake up! Wake up! In desperation, I started jumping up and down, hitting my head against the ceiling, trying to jolt myself awake. Wake up, wake up, wake up! I fell back against the stone wall, head throbbing, eyes burning, chest heaving in rapid, panic sobs. Why? I whimpered. Why can't I wake up? And just then, the zombie barked a deep, violent groan. Because it's not a dream. No, the creature wasn't talking to me. I'd put words in its decayed mouth, words that I knew I needed to hear. This isn't a dream, I imagined hearing from the mobile corpse. And it's not an injury or a hallucination. This is a real place, a real world, and you're going to have to accept that to survive. You're right, I said to the ghoul, knowing I was talking to myself, but still thinking that talking to a dead guy was somehow saner. This isn't happening in my head. This is happening. The fragment of a half-remembered song floated through the fog of my amnesia. Love that. That's such a good piece of figure language there. The fragment of and we've all done that. Like, you've heard a song before a long time ago, and then you remember part of it, and all of a sudden it comes into your head, and you're like, oh, I remember that song. She can't remember anything else, but she can remember the words to the song. Something about finding yourself in a strange place. I couldn't remember all the lyrics, but one stuck clearly in my mind. You may ask yourself, well, how did I get here? I don't know, I admitted. I don't know how I got here, or even where here is. Another planet? Another dimension? I don't know. But I know there's no point in denying it anymore. And with that acceptance came this huge wave of calm, and with the calm came a new mantra. Panic drowns thought, I told the zombie. So it's time to stop panicking and start figuring out how to survive. Alright, so that's the end of chapter 2. Got pretty serious there for a minute until she was able to dig a little spot to survive in, thankfully. So in the story, let's kind of walk in her steps. She finds her way through the woods up to the top of the hill. Okay, so she looks over the hill, and she can see this island. She gets over here and looks, and then she can see that there's nothing there. Uninhabited is what she called it. Now we have plenty of dirt huts here from where everyone in 4th grade has built their huts, but the main character did not have that. Okay. Okay, so let's check out some of the different mobs she encountered. Okay, to begin with, she said she heard a cow. She described the cow. I think if we look back, is a pretty good description of the cow. Okay, she also described seeing a sheep. And she said she reached out to pet it like that and accidentally hit it and it ran off through the woods. So, alright, she also said she saw some chicken. So there's some chicken. It does kind of have a duck-like quality. Definitely sounds like a chicken though, like she said. And then she said she encountered a zombie. I think she did a good description of that too. And then she also was almost hit by an arrow from a skeleton. So you see that. So she ended up having to run away from the skeleton. She had to come over, so she came over off the side of the cliff and she dug some blocks to get away from the zombie. So let's see if we can do that. Alright, so she would have it would have looked something like this, because she said the zombie, she had like one dirt block separating them. Let's see. Sort of like this. Okay. And then she ended up adding the second, oops. She ended up adding the second block so that you couldn't get to her. But then she was in dark. So this is kind of where the story ends at, or the chapter 2 ended, was in a situation like this. Okay, so no big assignment today. What I do want you to do though is to see if you could think of a situation that you've been in before where you kind of panicked and it made it where you couldn't think that clearly. Okay, so that's what her lesson she learns at the end: panic drowns thought. So it's time to stop panicking and start figuring out. So if there's ever a time that you have encountered like that where you kind of panicked, maybe it's in school, you're panicking because you had a test you forgot about, or you forgot to bring your homework in, or a lot of you guys are new here, so you panicked. Maybe you came to a new school, maybe that first day was kind of tough and you were panicking a bit. So it made it kind of hard to make decisions, good decisions, or think clearly. Maybe that's an example. And if you could think of anything like that, I want you to comment under this post if you don't mind sharing that with us, so we can all kind of talk about that and maybe even help each other out with what we were able to do in that situation when we panicked. So looking forward to hearing from you guys, what you have experiences, and looking forward to our next video when we start chapter 3. So, alright, you guys have a great week.